and thank you for joining us tonight on Hotspot. We're coming to the end of another great season, but not to worry. We've had major success in the sporting arena at the Commonwealth Games as well as the PNG Games. We're going to bring you highlights, so please stay tuned to watch Hotspot. Highlights of Rugby Union, soccer and cricket. But first of all, we've got kickboxing. Despite minor hiccups throughout the year, Rickson Yamo was able to secure a title on home soil. So let's take a look at kickboxing this year. Marking another milestone in kickboxing, Rickson the Powerhouse Yamo was crowned welterweight champion after a short-lived title fight against Finnish Jaakko Jussila. His determination was proven when seconds into the first round, a right kick that left Jussila ruled out on a torn muscle. Rickson remains ambitious to develop the K1 rule division in the country and hope that the kickboxing following will grow despite the outcome of his fights. Lee the Flash Garup also made his mark when he took on current WKF Muay Thai welterweight title holder Anthony Sudlaw Ford in the second title fight that evening. Garup's fight was also short-lived as he was ruled out to a broken nose. The kickboxing fraternity and enthusiasts came out in numbers to witness two pro world title fights staged at the Lamana Hotel in Port Moresby. 4 amateur fights, a boxing bout, and 2 pro fights were featured leading up to the title fights. President of PNG Kickboxing Stanley Nandex raised concerns of the legality and questioned the preparations of staging a title fight of this magnitude. With his experience as a fighter and promoter, he was disappointed that the governing body was overlooked in the lead-up to the title fight. An appeal for an open dialogue was met hours away from the event with both PNG Kickboxing Association and Powerhouse Promotions executives. He was also concerned about the safety and medical attention that all fighters are to receive before, during, and after each fight after a kickboxer lost his life 2 years ago. Further consultation was given by the World Kickboxing Federation that were there to officiate the title fights. To further strengthen the code in the country, most senior kickboxers have branched out and built up individual kickboxing clubs around the country. Mark Sai from Isipik, Morabez Suang, and NCD's Mark Sondo have led respective provincial teams to participate. They were also given the opportunity to officiate fights. First-timers from the autonomous region of Bougainville, Hela and Enga, put up a stronghold against giants from Morabe, NCD, and Southern Highlands in the recent 6 PNG Games. The Games featured the strong kickboxing following throughout the country. A total of 19 provinces took part. And we wish all the kickboxers the best in their preparations. We'll head off our first break for tonight. Up next, we'll have highlights of Rugby Union. If you've just joined us, you're watching Hotspot. This year in Rugby Union, we've had success. The Pukpuks securing a place in the Hong Kong Sevens, as well as the Palais, adding another silverware to the cabinet. A major success, a good success in Rugby Union and the development of rugby in the country. So now let's take a look at all the highlights in Rugby Union. In their maiden year of appearance, the Stingrays made it to the plate semi-finals but went down to the Black Orchids. The young Morabe Hammerheads outfit, the vibrant Kimber Rebels, the Rays from Daru and the Black Orchids were up against unknowns from Kavieng, Alotau, Mendi and Gulf, with the men's national provincial championships registering 16 teams all vying for the title. Despite an anticipated cup final between Morabe Hammerheads and Kimber Rebels, a controversial decision by officials forfeited the match and awarded the title to the Rebels after the Hammerheads contested the decision in the semi-finals and took matters into their own hands. Spartans, under the guidance of John Larry, took out the title in the Open Women's Division. With the rollout of the Pacific in Union program, Autonomous Region of Bougainville fielded teams for the Under-15s and Under-19s division. They were up against Leigh, Medang and Port Moresby schools and made their mark in the championships by taking out their respective titles. The 2014 rugby calendar kicked off the year with the inaugural Women's National Provincial Championships held in Port Moresby. It was a clash of the veterans as Kimber Rebels Gina Ponda led his men through another successive sevens tournament over former Pukpuks Paul Joseph and his young Gerhu Cowboys in the Cup final. The Osenko brothers, celebrating another milestone in rugby, hosted the Osenko Brothers Sevens, weeks away from the Men's National Provincial Championships. And the return of Women's 15 in the nation's capital saw a surge of young talent and the return of good old-school rugby. In year, both Juggernauts and Crusaders put up a stronghold despite finishing in the bottom 5. Harlequins went on to Chiefs in the finals. The under-19 men's division saw a seeded Harlequins side dominate the competition. In the men's A-grade division, University outplayed Defence to take the premiership. Defence, having an unbeaten season, took out the minor premiership and bragging rights after thrashing Harlequins in the men's Premier Grand Final. Port Moresby's Capital Rugby Union seeing the largest pool of clubs registered this season. Once again, the Rebels proved their worth in the Cup finals after beating the Cowboys. The tournament saw the emergence of teams as Hakatau Tai, Hurricanes, 3B Bulls, D6K9s and Manus Nalins. Stevens Logistics jumped on board the Sevens Fever and hosted the Gerahu Hot Sevens in September. And to cap off the calendar, success was sweet for the Black Orchids as they took out the Black Orchids Sevens title on home soil against the Kimber Rebels. On the international front, our Pukpuks, having new blood in the team, have found their footing after the Oceania Sevens and qualification for the Hong Kong Sevens. Our junior Pukpuks will also go into camp next year. And our Palais also capped off the year on a high note with a couple of silverware added to the cabinet and will be preparing for the next tournament in February. And I'm sure you'll be gearing up for another great year of rugby in 2015. We'll head out for another break for tonight. Stay tuned as we have more on Hotspot. Welcome back, you're watching Hotspot. As I've mentioned earlier, we've had great success throughout the year in sports. Jeremy Moggy, our soccer guru, will join us on anything and everything soccer that has happened this year, as well as cricket. Let's take a look.
Yeah, thank you, Scholar. Well, the season was actually delayed by a couple of months, and one of the causes, or actually one of the resulting forces behind that was the exclusion of FC Port Moresby in the 2013-14 season. That's already been sorted out. Wasn't a really major issue, so to speak. Just the club wasn't able to participate. Although when I had spoken to Reginald Davani, who's a good mate, he runs the club really well as well. They were actually looking forward to the season, but circumstances they weren't part of that. However, newcomers were Scientific Zulu Panamax, or Panamax Scientific Zulu Leigh FC, and they came out firing throughout the year. In fact, both Morabian teams, that's Morabe FC and Leigh FC, made it in second and third place respectively by the end of the season. They were ahead of another newcomer, that was Aura FC, who made it in fourth place, and minor premiers and eventual league winners were Hekari, who rounded up the top four. Now, other clubs that were also new included the boys from Manus, Admiralty Peliao FC. They're run by the Postmans, and they've got a nice setup there as well. I'm thinking they're going to be very, very strong in the 2014-2015 season as well. I'm looking forward to watching them play, considering that a couple of the boys from the Admiralty team ended up back in the Manus province and then played just a couple of weeks ago, losing to Medang in the grand final of the PNG games. So, there's quality players all across the pitch. Besta boys were good. This is the PNG development side. There's a whole bunch of young boys in that team. They were, I think they missed out just by a couple of points towards the finals there, but they performed above and beyond expectation. As a development side, you aren't always expected to win every game, but especially against the bigger clubs, so to speak, Besta FC really proved themselves, and performed. Eastern Stars, on the other hand, were a little bit disappointing. Although Joseph Yaladona, who is the club manager, I spoke to him just a couple of weeks ago. In fact, they might not be taking part in this season's, or in the new season of the NSL, which is going to be disappointing for the boys. Although I'm hoping that they do make a show and representing the guys from the eastern part of the country. You see, Besta FC had a lot of young players. Hekari didn't. Hekari made it to the grand final. Hekari won 9 in a row. In terms of the talent, well, in all honesty, the talent has been there, and it has been there for a while. PNG has very talented players. There's no doubt about it. Why we're not the best in the Pacific, I'm not too sure. That's a question we'll have to ask the ones in higher places than myself, of course. But talking about the younger, if you're talking about the younger players that are coming up, well, I'm expecting 2014, 2015 to really showcase a lot of these young talents, especially considering the fact that throughout the PNG games there were scouts. There were scouts available in the crowd, keeping very, very low profiles, but they were watching these players. And well, like I said a couple of weeks ago, the potential of these players from the PNG games is there, and it would be great to see a lot of them taken out from these rural areas and then filtered into the existing NSL clubs. First of all, you have to have a development program, but then you have to have good development coaches. Now, bearing this in mind, development coaches are different from competition coaches. The structure, the philosophy, the format, the style of coaching that they have is totally different. These are two different things. Currently, right now, from what I've seen, and I'll have to be straightforward here, there is a vacuum between our development phase and then our NSL competition. The NSL is at one particular level over here, whereas our development is different. A lot of times these young players are coming through, being pushed up into the senior competitions and then left out on the bench. They're sitting and watching everyone else play instead of being part of that process. My highlight in the NSL was actually not paying any gate fee and just walking in and covering the stories. I wasn't that, as you obviously know, I wasn't really that good as a player. But just being there on the sideline, just watching these games, just watching, a couple of the teams there, I have a lot of my friends and family in them, and just watching them play, admiring how they play. In general, the entire NSL season itself was one big highlight for me. It was a great opportunity to meet and greet, especially coaches, players from outside the circle that I had been brought up with. But well, I'm looking forward to it. I'm expecting the Momasa boys coming down from both Leh and Medang, the town and the city, to really put in a good challenge. I'm a Portmore boy through and through, but I have to say I really admire how these teams from outside play. The biggest challenge for the season would have had to be, I don't know, I really don't, because you see, Telecom gave 1 million kina in sponsorship to the NSL, spread out over 3 years, of course. So they in theory should have enough money to run their competitions. I think one of the main problems that happened after the NSL was the fact that prize money wasn't allocated. Even now, the second place, the losers in the grand final, I think that was Leh FC, are still complaining about the fact that they haven't received their money yet, although that has yet to be confirmed.
We'll head off our final break for tonight. Up next, we'll wrap up the show. Unfortunately, we've come to the end of another great show on Hotspot, but not to worry. If you have any sports-related stories, please shoot us an email at sports@emtv.com.pg. If you're in Port Moresby, drop by to second floor Garden City and ask for a very awesome sports team. And if you're on Facebook, I know most of you are, so please check us out. There's a lot happening throughout the Christmas period, so take care. The corporate blood donation drive is on, so get out there and support a worthy cause. Just a big shout out to two very special people, Daniel and Leon, celebrating their birthday throughout the weekend. So I'll be popping over for ice cream and cake. But until next week, play hard, play safe, and we'll catch you right here on Hotspot.